What happened when a truck convoy turned into a battlefield? During the Vietnam War, trucks didn't just carry supplies, they fought to survive. Between deadly ambushes, improvised armor, and crossfire, these giants on wheels wrote a brutal, forgotten story. Today we relive the hell that roared in every engine. Stay until the end. What you're about to discover, few even dare to remember. An invisible enemy and an unprotected fleet. By the summer of 1967, the US military machine in Vietnam was trapped by its own logistics. As ground operations expanded, hundreds of forward bases, especially in the Central Highlands, depended on a fragile network of convoys traveling narrow routes through jungle terrain. Roads like QL-19, linking the port of Quy Nhon with the bases at An Khê and Pleiku, became vital arteries. But those convoys, made up mostly of unarmored cargo trucks, were easy targets. The most common vehicles were 2 half-ton trucks such as the GMC CCKW, known as the Deuce and a Half, along with the M52 and M54, all 6x6, originally designed for logistics, not combat. The drivers, most of them barely over 20, were not trained soldiers. They received only basic weapons instruction and carried an M14 or M16 rifle with a few magazines. Convoy protection was limited to 1 or 2 jeeps fitted with M60 machine guns. The Trap of Ambush Alley. On September 2, 1967, a convoy of nearly 90 vehicles was returning to Kon Tum. As it entered a sharp curve surrounded by dense jungle, later known as Ambush Alley, an explosion ripped through the lead jeep. A recoilless rifle shot destroyed it, killing the commander. Immediately, mines hidden in wooden planks detonated, blocking the road and halting the convoy. From the hillside, more than 60 North Vietnamese soldiers opened fire with automatic rifles. RPGs and claymore mines. Trucks burst into flames. Some drivers tried firing from their cabs, others jumped out to return fire from the ground. Within minutes, more than 30 vehicles were disabled. 7 soldiers were killed, 17 wounded. The enemy had studied the convoy system, knew how long reaction helicopters took to arrive, about 10 minutes in this case, and used that window to inflict maximum damage. The war changes forever. That attack changed the mindset of the entire 8th Transportation Company. Driving trucks was no longer a rear area job. Drivers became priority targets. The army increased patrols, cleared strips of jungle along the roads with roam plows, and set up more checkpoints, but nothing was enough. The jungle, with its ability to hide enemies just meters from the road, was impossible to control. The improvised solution: gun trucks. With too few tanks or armored vehicles available to escort convoys, the answer came from the mechanics and soldiers themselves. They took what they had, cargo trucks, and transformed them. The first attempts used sandbags to shield the cab and cargo bed, with 1 or 2 machine guns mounted in the rear. But when the rains came, those bags soaked up water like sponges, overloading suspensions and overheating engines. So the hunt for steel began. Armor plates were salvaged from damaged vehicles, downed helicopters, even abandoned boats. They were cut to size and welded onto the sides, cab, and engine bay. Every gun truck was unique. Some had extra flooring panels made of wood or rubber to help against mines. As for weapons, the M60S were quickly replaced by Browning .50 caliber machine guns, far more effective. A brutal and effective transformation. Up to 4 Brownings could be mounted on a single platform. Some trucks carried miniguns salvaged from helicopters. Others even had M45 quad mounts, quadruple machine guns originally designed for anti-aircraft defense. The result was a steel monster, slow but devastating. They were often painted black, with intimidating names scrawled on the sides and positioned at the head, center, and tail of each convoy. Meanwhile, the North Vietnamese army also adapted its own vehicles for war. The standout was the ZIL 157, a Soviet-built 6x6 truck, extremely tough, which became the enemy's logistical workhorse. It was used both to transport troops and to mount heavy DSHK machine guns, especially along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where jungle terrain demanded reliability. Complementing the ZIL was the smaller GAZ-63, a 4x4 light escort vehicle. Though less powerful, it was more maneuverable on narrow trails and was sometimes reinforced with improvised armor. As the war progressed, North Vietnam also received the ZIL 131, a more modern, capable model. These trucks appeared in the later stages of the conflict, some converted into platforms for machine guns or even anti-aircraft cannons. China, for its part, supplied large numbers of the Shanxi SX 2150, a copy of the Soviet ZIL, also known as the Jifang CA-30. These trucks played a central role in North Vietnamese logistics, often adapted to carry mobile anti-aircraft systems like the ZPU-1 and ZPU-2. An inevitable escalation. As the enemy perfected its infiltration routes, American gun trucks evolved as well. The original 2 half-ton models were replaced by the 5-ton M54S, which could handle more armor and heavier weapons without losing mobility. Some even carried stripped-down M113 armored personnel carriers on their beds, turning them into rolling fortresses, though extremely heavy and hard to maneuver. These adaptations seemed absurd, but they worked. Each convoy became a mix of cargo trucks and improvised combat trucks. The ideal ratio, which began as 1 for every 10 trucks, quickly shifted to 1 for every 5 when enough were available. Their mission was clear. Open fire, distract the enemy, cover the cargo trucks, and evacuate the wounded from the kill zone. A new tactic, fighting fire with more fire. As gun trucks proved their worth in the first clashes, squads began to develop more aggressive tactics. It was no longer just about escorting and defending from the rear, but about responding to fire with an immediate and brutal offensive. Gun trucks stopped being just passive protection. They became the first units to plunge straight into the hell of crossfire. If a convoy was ambushed, the gun trucks didn't retreat. They charged into the ambush, unleashing everything they had to scatter the attackers. One fundamental tactic was bumping. The gun truck leading the convoy would stop briefly in the kill zone, firing its entire arsenal until the second truck arrived to take over. That way, the line of fire was never left uncovered. Meanwhile, the cargo trucks escaped the kill zone as fast as possible. Each crew developed its own tactical variations, adapting to the terrain, the number of men, and the weapons available. From improvised metal to functional design. Although the first modifications were improvised, Army engineers soon began to standardize certain components. Pre-cut steel plates were distributed so units no longer had to scavenge armor from junkyards or wrecked helicopters. The 5-ton M54S, with more power and better suspension, became the ideal base for these transformations. Their chassis could handle extra weight without overheating or suffering structural damage, vital when the added armor easily surpassed a ton. Configurations varied depending on each platoon's creativity. Some trucks carried a rotating turret in the rear, others had multiple firing points mounted on the corners. On several occasions, something radical was attempted. Placing an M113 armored vehicle stripped of its tracks and engine, just the steel shell on the truck bed. Though this made it extremely unstable and tall, it allowed for full 360-degree protection and space for multiple gunners. The roar of the Ural and the Chinese copy on the other side of the war, trucks were also adapted, but with a different approach. The Soviet-built Ural 375 was one of the most powerful assets in the North Vietnamese inventory. Equipped with a V8 gasoline engine, full 6x6 drive, and a payload capacity of over 5 tons, it was perfect for hauling heavy artillery or large amounts of ammunition. Its power also made it suitable for conversion into a gun truck, mounting heavy machine guns or even Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft cannons in the rear. A similar, though somewhat less powerful model was the Shanxi SX 2150, a direct Chinese copy of the ZIL 157. This truck, known as the Jifang CA-30, was widely used throughout North Vietnam's logistics network. Like its Soviet counterparts, it could be converted into a weapons platform thanks to its rugged design. Many carried ZPU-1 or ZPU-2 systems. Anti-aircraft weapons also used effectively for ground defense against U.S. convoys. Crossfire and heroism at full-speed gun trucks didn't just protect supplies, they also saved lives. One of the most striking examples took place on February 23, 1971, in the pass known as KRAZ. The convoy was advancing when a rain of fire erupted from the hillside. Among 6 fuel tankers was the gun truck Brutus, an M54 armed with multiple machine guns. When 2 tankers exploded, Brutus held its ground, firing non-stop. A rocket struck the rear, killing gunner Ronald Callison and wounding 2 others. Despite this, the crew kept firing. In the midst of smoke and flames, an enemy platoon emerged from the jungle. One soldier hurled a grenade directly into the open weapons compartment. Specialist Larry Dahl shouted a warning and threw himself onto the explosive. The blast killed him instantly, but saved his comrades' lives. The smoke-filled cab of Brutus pushed forward at full speed, weaving through burning trucks and escaping the kill zone with the wounded aboard. Dahl was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. His sacrifice became legend among transport troops. The ghosts of unprotected convoys. Not every convoy had gun trucks. On August 25, 1968, a convoy of 81 trucks loaded with ammunition and fuel moved through the village of Apneu without armored protection. Only 8 jeeps with M60 machine guns accompanied the column. Soldiers spotted men dressed as ARVN allies carrying M16 rifles, but they were disguised Viet Cong. The ambush was instant and overwhelming. Among the drivers was Specialist William Say, hauling explosive cargo. He leapt from his truck and opened fire, killing 2 enemies almost immediately. When his rifle jammed, he spotted a sniper in a tree 75 meters away, shot him, and brought him down. In the following minutes, CA kicked back and returned 3 grenades before they detonated, killing those who had thrown them. Wounded in the wrist, he continued organizing the defense with other drivers. He managed to eliminate 3 more enemies before being struck by a fatal shot to the head. He was just 60 days from completing his tour of duty. CA2 was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Deadly craftsmanship in a sea of jungle gun trucks weren't elegant nor efficient by modern standards, but they were effective. Each unit was a handcrafted creation of steel, sweat, desperation, and ingenuity. Crews, usually 5 men, trained each other. They learned when to accelerate, when to stop, how to cover one another. Their mission was simple: dive into the fire and keep the column of trucks alive. The crews carried M79 grenade launchers, hand grenades, rifles, pistols, flares, and above all, hundreds of belts of ammunition to sustain constant fire. The sound of a gun truck entering combat was unmistakable. A barrage of mechanical thunder the enemy quickly learned to fear. That's why they called it the Dragon's Breath. Steel camouflage and the combat psyche. Each gun truck was more than an improvised war machine. It was a visual statement. Many bore names proudly painted in large letters: Brutus the Untouchable, Iron Butterfly, or Cold Sweat. These names were no accident. They served as symbols of identity for the crews, a psychological armor against the horrors of the jungle. Most were painted matte black, not only to intimidate the enemy but also to hide the shine of metal under the tropical sun. Crews, young but hardened by combat, developed routines to prepare their trucks before every mission. They checked each machine gun, adjusted steel plates, inspected the oil and brake systems. In the rear, the armored structure became a box of fire, a cramped space with machine guns mounted on each corner and small firing slits. Primitive as it was, this setup allowed for 180-degree coverage or more, and in some cases, overlapping fire in every direction. The return of the past, old trucks, new roles. While the US adapted modern technology, North Vietnam had no problem reusing vehicles inherited from the past. One of the most iconic was the Studebaker US-6. An American truck from World War II delivered to the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease program. Decades later, those units ended up in North Vietnam, still running, though slow and with less capacity. They were used as basic transport in the early stages of the conflict. Similarly, several GMC CCKWs captured during the war against France or against the US were restored and used by the Viet Cong. Their ruggedness and sturdy design made them ideal for rough terrain. Some were even modified with simple metal frames to mount heavy machine guns. The Soviets and Chinese didn't just send trucks, they sent adaptable weapon systems as well. Many vehicles were converted into mobile anti-aircraft platforms. The ZIL 157 and its Chinese copy, the Shaanxi SX 2150, were commonly used to carry and fire 12.7 mm DSHK heavy machine guns and at times ZPU-1, ZPU-2 or ZU-23-2 anti-aircraft cannons, though designed for planes. These weapons were just as lethal against ground targets. Their presence in the rear threatened not only helicopters, but also poorly protected convoys. Defensive strategies against ambushes. Over time, US convoys learned to identify patterns and adapt strategies. The enemy struck in narrow places with dense vegetation close to the road, sharp bends, and poor visibility. That's why longer convoys were divided into sections, with gun trucks strategically positioned, at least one in the front, another in the middle, and one more at the rear. The idea was simple. If the column was attacked from any direction, there would always be a gun truck nearby to respond. Alongside bumping, Another tactic was the double fire strategy. While one truck responded from inside the kill zone, another pushed forward to evacuate the wounded or protect damaged trucks. Often, gun trucks also acted as evacuation transports under fire. Drivers knew that if one truck was hit, the gunners in the back were the only ones who could hold off the enemy long enough to escape. The culture of the gun truck. Over time, these trucks and their crews developed a subculture within the Army. They weren't tanks, they weren't infantry, but they earned everyone's respect. They lived between the front line and the supply line. An ambiguous, deadly space. They moved slowly but knew that at any moment they could be caught in a storm of bullets. Some decorated their trucks with skulls, shark teeth, or even religious symbols, anything that gave them strength. Some gun truck platoons even wrote their own unofficial rules on how to act during an ambush. Never stop. If the truck stops, you're dead. Shoot first. Ask later. If you see the enemy's mouth, aim for the chest. Simple phrases born from fear and experience. The transition toward modern platforms. When the war ended, many of these trucks were abandoned, bases closed, roads forgotten, and vehicles rusted away, testimonies of an improvised era. But the concept didn't die. The lessons learned from gun trucks became the foundation for developing modern convoy escort platforms. Today's armored vehicles with automatic turrets, thermal sensors, and remote-controlled weapons owe part of their origin to those crude ideas applied in Vietnam. What began as a desperate attempt to protect supplies evolved into a model of mobile combat. The transport truck stopped being a victim and became a weapon of war, a necessity-driven evolution that forever changed how military logistics under fire are conceived. The enemy learns to respect the dragon. As gun trucks kept winning engagements, ambushes grew more cautious. The Viet Cong no longer attacked with the same confidence. They knew that hidden in a convoy could be a steel monster ready to respond with overwhelming fire. In the jungle's darkness, when lights flickered and the roar of Browning shattered the silence, they would say, "The dragon's breath has arrived." And on those nights, through smoke, mud, shrapnel, and screams, those improvised trucks kept rolling forward like armed ghosts, carrying ammunition, water, food, and hope. If this story of improvised armor, crossfire courage, and trucks turned into legend grabbed you, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Here, every engine has its story. And every journey takes us to the heart of a forgotten battle. See you on the next road where steel and history roar once again.